Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Daily Distinction. We are kicking the week off. I've been scurrying around here. I got to tell you, we had some technical issues getting started here today. But got it. Hopefully, got it going. Hopefully, you can hear me, and everything is good. So, why does that happen? It's like I don't mean to be the typical. Oh my gosh, it's Monday, but it's Monday. So hope everybody's doing great. Hope it's coming through okay because I'm doing this on Wi-Fi rather than hardwire like I typically do. But here we are. It's Monday. Glad you are here and excited that you're part of it. You know, one of the things we haven't talked about for a while is that we do have a Facebook page. All you need to do is jump on our Facebook page and check it out. Just search for Daily Distinction on Facebook, and it is there for you. Also, I'm going to put this at the bottom. We have Distinction Radio, and it's on 24/7. And just anytime you want a little dose of distinction, you can go to Distinction Radio. You can just say to your Amazon device, Alexa, play Distinction Radio. It should take you there. Make certain that you say play Distinction Radio. I think that, Alexa? Oh, I don't have one in here, do I? I've got SIRI and OKGOOGLE. That's pretty bad. You know, parents used to have to spell around their kids, or still do, right? Parents spell around their kids. We got to spell around our devices now. But man, I just got a thing. We had hundreds of listeners to Distinction Radio this last week. I just got the report. So that's very, very cool. And don't forget, for free resources, you can go to distinctionnation.com. I'm going to take that off because we are taking down the audio program. But anyway, go to distinctionnation.com. I haven't talked about that for a while, so I just want to make sure that I got that in. Hey, Mike, great to see you. Happy Monday to you too. I hope everything is good with you. Scott, it was great to see you last night on our show. Brian, always good to see you. Thanks. Appreciate it, Randall, that it sounded good. Cheryl, good to see you on Monday, along with Tim Gillette, who does such a great live stream. Thank you, Tim, for being here. I appreciate it. Well, and so far, so good, right? My mentor, Grady Nutt, wrote a book where he flipped that and said, so good so far. I always like that little flip. Hey, and as you can see behind me, registration is now open for the Distinction Summit. We're calling it Stand Out and Earn More, because when you stand out, you do earn more. And we're not just talking about more money. It's more customers. It's more employees or more applicants. When you create distinction in your marketplace, you earn more respect from your competition and from your customers. There's a lot of ways that you earn more. It's October 16th through the 18th. Just go to distinctionsummit.com and you get $100 off the registration through Labor Day, which is coming up quicker. The Labor Day sounds so far away, and here we are in the last day of August. Incredible. So that's what I'd love for you to do. Go check that out. $100 off through Labor Day at distinctionsummit.com. Stand out, earn more. The Distinction Summit coming up in October. So as we talk about standing out, here's an important way to do it. Communication is an important way to stand out. And Brian, you communicating that is really cool. I really appreciate that. Thank you for putting that out there and sharing. I hope it gets to some folks coming in. And Charles, always great to see you. It was great to see you last night. Cheers to everybody from Charles from California. Communication is such a key, and it's something that we all need to think about and focus on. How do we communicate more effectively? There is a new article in the Harvard Business Review that talks about some of the challenges that we have in terms of communicating effectively. And there was a line in the article that really struck me. It said, the way we speak is both who we are and who we want to be. In terms of how we communicate, it not only represents who we are, but also communication is also a reflection on who we want to be. And so we're communicating many things. We're not just communicating information. We're communicating insight about who we are. We're communicating insight about who we want to be. It always strikes me when someone has bad communication, they're caught saying something, that there's a couple things that they do, and we'll talk more about it before we're finished up today. But one of the things that they often do is to say, this isn't who I am. And I don't mean to pile on because I'm a a fan of his ability and a fan of what his dad did. But Tom Brenneman, who is the son of Marty Brenneman, a Hall of Fame Cincinnati Reds play-by-play broadcaster, and Tom Brenneman, who broadcast for the Cubs and for Fox on the NFL games, was caught using a very derogatory term for the gay community. And his first thing he said was, "This isn't who I am." And, you know, if you're a part of the Ultimate Business Summit, you've heard my pal Larry Winget talk about this. No, it really is who you, I mean, if that's what you were saying off the air and you didn't realize that you were on the air and you got caught, that's a reflection of who you are, right? I mean, it is. And it may not be who you want to be, and you may want to commit yourself to being better for the future, but that's kind of a reflection of who you are at that particular moment, because that's what you were saying. Now, I understand that we may be a little bit too sensitive as a culture. You know, if it was you, somebody said this, or you're quoting someone, or you're, you know, whatever. I think we can get too sensitive as a culture about that, which stifles the very communication that brings about a greater degree of equality. But nonetheless, it always gets me when people say, "Oh, that's not who I am." Yeah, it's kind of who you are at that particular time. So communication speaks to who we are and to who we want to be. So let's not try to be stereotypical. I'm borrowing this from the Harvard Business Review article. But one of the things that we find in communication, if you're trying to stand out so you can earn more, is that women are less likely than men to blow their own horns. Women are less likely than men, according to the research that's in the Harvard Business Review, to be self-promoters. And they're also more likely than men to believe that if they are self-promoting, they won't be liked, that it will turn people against them. So from the very onset, we find that, you know, I was talking last night on the Ken and Glenn show with the guy named Scott, that one of my pet peeves on the "Ooh, that's just wrong" segment, one of the things I was talking about is that it just kills me. It's my pet peeve when someone says, "World's number one," name it, "world's number one motivational speaker, world's number one consultant, world's number one coach, world's number one sales trainer, world's number one." I would never buy anything from anybody that said they were the world's number one. Now, don't get me wrong. If they say, as Forbes magazine said, you know, Jane Doe is the world's number one, now that's different. If you're quoting a respected publication and that respected publication said that you're world's number one, or if the Gallup poll did a survey and you came back as the world's number one. But I don't know how you could be the world's number one whatever if nobody's heard about you. I mean, I got this thing from somebody saying they were the world's number one speaker, and it's somebody I've never heard of. Now don't get me wrong. I'm not presumptuous enough to think that the only way that you can be good at speaking is if I've heard of you. That's not what I mean at all. But when you say that you're the world's number one speaker, my first response is, you know, where'd Tony Robbins fit in on that list? You know, he's pretty good. And, you know, I've been doing this for a while. I'm certain not number one, but, you know, could I see where I fit in the top 100? Oh, there wasn't a survey. Oh, you're proclaiming that. I notice it's very seldom, if ever, women that say world's number one. It's usually some guy who wants to claim this because they believe if they blow their own horn, there you go, Tim, world's number one failure. I might believe that. But I wouldn't even believe that, right? It's right, when someone says world's number one, it has everything to do with arrogance and nothing to do with value or proof, right? See, there's the thing. I mean, if you would list 10 clients and say these 10 clients say, of all the speakers, you know, there's a quote I use. I gave a speech for Cisco, and literally everybody in the audience gave me a perfect 5. That's incredible. I mean, I was so fortunate. And Cisco wrote a letter and said, in the history of our company, the highest rated speaker we've ever had. Now, I can quote that letter and say, you know, highest rated speaker in the history of our company. That's what they said. Do I proclaim from that I'm the best speaker? No, I'm not the best. It's just exactly what they said. It's the highest rated speaker. So, you can make these claims, but for goodness sakes, make certain that there's something that you could do to back it up. Because what happens if people, what happens if people ask about that? Yeah, I agree, Weldon. I got some blowback and some criticism because one of the things I've said is if you had to fake it till you make it, does that mean when you make it, you're a fake? If you fake it until you make it, when you make it, does that mean you're a fake? I don't know. I think so. Bruce, yeah, who said if you can't be authentic, fake it? Yeah, it's true. And Cheryl, you're exactly right. Some people's egos are way too big. And they think that brings them more attention. And it gets back to what I put here earlier is there's so much clutter out there in the marketplace that we often think we have to make these big boasts and these big aggrandizing statements, or else it's not going to get attention. Charles, always trying to improve myself. When I say something out of character, it's buried in me somewhere. Yeah, you got to own it. Yeah, absolutely. And man, I'll tell you what, there are things that I have said that I sure am glad it's not on the front page of the paper or somebody's tweeting it out. I've made mistakes in what I've said. And I would hope that there's enough body of other things that I've said that people would kind of give me a little bit of forgiveness on it. But I wouldn't come out and say, that's not who I am. I was going to say, at that moment, I would say something like, I need to be better than that. I want to be better than that. See, if he would come out and said, I said a horrible thing. I've got to get better. And I'm going to step away and I'm going to work on myself. And that's something totally different. Tim, Paul in the Bible claimed to be the number one sinner, or maybe he said he was the sinner of all sinners. Yes. And when you're Paul, you can do that. Right? That's good. There you go. I love this. I love this line, Brian. If you say it, it's bragging. If your customers say it, it's proof. Yeah. Dizzy Dean said it ain't bragging if you've done it. Right. So there are certain things that I can say because I've done it, but to claim you're the world's number one because no, that's it. Yes, Mike, it's a quick loss of credibility. And that's what kills me is that the only people that believe those are the people who are most vulnerable to it. If you believe that claim, it shows you're vulnerable to those types of claims. And those are the people that need to hear from people with integrity the most. But back to this, women believe and there's the fine line that we've talked about so many times here. There's a fine line in this. And men have learned more than women how to toot their own horns. And women believe if they do it, they won't be liked. And therefore, we've got to get better at being honest and humble, but yet not be afraid to build on our accomplishments as a way to deal respect. Here's another thing the survey found. Women are more likely to downplay their certainty. Men are more likely to minimize their doubts. What I probably shouldn't get into this, but it's one of the things that's a hot button for me. So when the survey or when the study came out and it said that, COVID, they were changing the definition of the deaths there. It just struck me that people find in a report what they want to see, me included, but they find in a report what they want to see. Did it really surprise anybody that there was underlying conditions with a lot of folks that have passed from this? I mean, when my first wife passed away from cancer, the cancer had taken over her lungs and her lungs couldn't operate, couldn't function, couldn't provide her the oxygen that she needed to survive. The cancer had even gone into her brain. But the cause of death was ovarian cancer, because that's just kind of how they do it. It's where the cancer starts, is the kind of cancer that you have. My dad's cause of death was congestive heart failure. So it reads heart failure. But what happened was his heart was so weak, it couldn't pump the fluid out of his lungs. And basically you can't breathe. But it was heart failure. Even though it was his lungs, his heart kept beating weakly, but his lungs. So the fact that for many people, there are multiple reasons why they die. So if you have had emphysema and then you contract COVID, and so what it means is that if you obesity is one of the things that is an underlying condition that makes COVID difficult to deal with. Well, if you're one of the 40% of Americans who have that, it just gets me that I see all these people who have absolutely no doubt that now everything is wrong and we've totally been like. We minimize any doubt we have. We would rather be certain than be interested. And I really think that's something that we got to work to fight. Wherever you are on that. Hey, Glenn, by the way, I just noticed right before we went on, in the night last night, I knocked over my phone and I picked it up and I put it back on and I'm half asleep. And evidently I butt dialed, not with my butt, but with my sleepy thumb, called Glenn Morshower at like 1:30 in the morning. So I am so sorry that I did that. I hope I didn't wake you up, man. But yes, I actually believe the guy who claimed to be the world's #1 exaggerator. Would you believe it if somebody said I'm the world's second biggest exaggerator? If they qualified the statement, would that disqualify them from what they said? I don't know. That's. But what we have to do is to understand that as we communicate, it's a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of what we want to be. It's also a reflection of societal norms. So let's look at just a few specific ways that we communicate and think about how that happens and what this might do to how we are perceived. One is apologies. If you make an apology, how do you make that apology? One of the things the study found is that if you apologize for specific things that have gone wrong, then you are more likely to maintain your positioning. So in other words, if a company has a bad product, this is an old example. Remember Tylenol? And what they do, they came in and they took every bottle of Tylenol off the shelf, and immediately they apologized for Tylenol, even though it had been poisoned, didn't have anything to do with it. And they came back and said, we apologize. This is what we're going to do to fix it. And that's where the tamper-proof lids started happening. Well, the parent company of Tylenol didn't lose any status through their apology. However, one of the things that we see right now in apologies is when people qualify the apology. If you were offended by my comments, I'm really sorry. In those situations, the study found that people lost their positioning. You know why? Because subliminally what they're saying is, but if you weren't offended, I'm not sorry at all. We want you to be sorry for the specific behavior. But when you, in this culture, and I know that we have folks watching from all over the world, but in the United States anyway, if you issue this blanket apology, it tends to be perceived as a lessening of status. But if you apologize for specific behavior and take responsibility for specific things that have gone wrong, you enhance your perception in the marketplace. Isn't that interesting? A blanket apology, oh, we're horrible people, doesn't work. But when we apologize specifically, that tends to raise our status. Charles, I'm in the top billion. Yeah, I'll join you there. I'm in the top billion of Yeah, we hear the yeah, exactly. We see it's not really an apology. It's something they think they have to do, right? I'm supposed to say I'm sorry for this. And so if you were offended, I'm sorry. And if you weren't, then aren't we all good now? I shouldn't have to suffer because of my mistake, should I? It's the type of apology that we typically get. I love that. 73.6% of statistics are made up. Good one, Tim. I like that one. Here's the next thing. How do we give and receive feedback? How do we give and receive feedback? So Tammy and I were on Saturday. We were watching some. We were trying to pick out some old television shows we hadn't seen for a long time, just to go back and pick out some episodes. And so we picked out an old episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and there was this great scene where they were getting the worst service imaginable in a restaurant. And the waitress came up and asked Mary, and so how was your dinner? And Mary, who had just said, this is the worst experience I've ever had dining out. I'll never come back to this restaurant again. And the waitress, who had taken such horrible care of him, said, is everything okay? How did you enjoy tonight? And Mary Tyler Moore says, it was fine. Which is typically the type of feedback that we give. Now, first off, that should terrify us in business, because they told them it was fine, but they would never go back to the restaurant. In other words, as we seek customer feedback, we need something more than fine. My buddy Shep Hyken says that's the F word in business, fine, because fine means it's not fine. Not, you know. So how do we give feedback? How do we receive feedback? The article in the Harvard Business Review talks about these two speakers, a woman and a man, that have spoken at this conference. And the man says to the woman, how did you like my speech? And she said, oh, it was fine. How did you like mine? And he begins to give her a very detailed and specific critique of where her speech had not been adequate. And her generic feedback to him made him feel good about a presentation that wasn't that good. That's why she said fine. His overly detailed and specific feedback to her made her feel badly about a speech that was later determined to be more highly rated than the man's. So how we give and how we receive feedback is absolutely critical. And not only feedback, compliments. One of the best techniques of management that I ever heard is to praise the worker, criticize the work. Praise the person, criticize the specific function. You're the best, Glenn. Try our new poison-free Tylenol. Yes, that's exactly what our new. By the way, that reminds me of the old George Carlin thing, Glenn, which I love, is when he would see these things. One of his great lines is, why do we drive on the parkway and park in the driveway? Right? It makes no sense. But the other thing is, he said, when we say it's new and improved, it can't be both. If you improved it, then it was existing and we made it better. If it's new, it can't be improved because it hadn't been out there. We can't be new and improved. It's one or the other. Right? I love that. Right? It's amazing how far authenticity, integrity, and one's humanity matters when they made a mistake. Yeah. Are we sincere about that? We need to give honest feedback, not blast people. It's so true, Charles. It's not me anymore. I tell them what they need to fix. Yeah, exactly. And Weldon, I think that's a great favor that you do that. It's specific, and that's the best way to give feedback. Brian says, 2 greatest lessons I learned in theater school. 1, be openly willing and able to accept criticism and do something about it. Yeah. Tim, best served to tell me how to improve instead of stroke my ego. Would rather hear what I need than what I want. That is so true. So compliments and how we give them. And I think sometimes, have you ever been this way where someone is giving you a compliment and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, all right, now here it comes. Yeah. And you're almost waiting for they've taught that sandwich thing so much that the compliment, it's the bread, and then the meat is the criticism, and then there's the bread at the bottom where they give you another compliment. And that has been taught so much and done so much that, that sometimes when we hear that compliment, we think, oh man, here comes the criticism. So I would suggest we give compliments just for compliment's sake, when they're earned, when they're deserved, and we compliment the person. One of the things that after a speech, some people almost feel a duty to shake the speaker's hand and say, good speech. Don't get me wrong. I truly appreciate that. I sincerely appreciate that they would take the time and make the effort, come up and say something. But the ones I really value is when they said, when you said this, and they say something specific from the speech and then say, that really struck a chord with me. Man, those are the ones that just send me over the moon, because the more precise and specific the compliment, the more that it's taken to heart. Here's a quick one I just want to mention, and that's, some folks don't understand what's called a ritual opposition. Here's the best way I've got to describe this, but it's part of how some people communicate. I remember in Crothersville, Indiana, when after my family sold the grocery store, then we got this little gas station and had a few things you could buy in it, and so people would come in, and there were these two old guys from back home that would sit in there, and when a stranger would come in, they'd think, man, these two old dudes are about ready to fight. One would walk in and one guy'd say, good morning. And the guy said, well, it was till you walked in. And he said, well, if I'd known you were here, I wouldn't have come in here anyway. And an outsider would think these two guys were about to duke it out. They were best friends. There is something called ritual opposition that happens many times in communication. And many times folks feel uncomfortable about it because you kind of got to be in the club to take part in that. But it's one of the forms of communication that once you get into where you can have kind of a ritual opposition, it happens when people talk about sports teams, Patriots fans versus Colts fans is one that I've dealt with that it's almost like it's a ritual that you've got to oppose that. So you have to be a fan of the team to be kind of able to make those comments. So it is an important aspect of communication to understand. The reason is because people in powerful positions are likely to reward communication styles, linguistic styles similar to their own. Isn't it interesting that people tend to associate with people most like themselves? Now, in romance, we always hear that opposites attract. Why is that? Well, I think the reason is because if you're a real outgoing, fun-loving, spontaneous person, you meet someone who is very methodical and analytical, and you think together we make a meaningful whole, right? But when you look at your pals, male or female, they tend to communicate much as you do. So one of the most important things that we can learn is to learn, to be a student of communication, to learn. When they dislike their stuff, I love your outfit. Yes, exactly. Where did you get that tie? Yeah, Bruce, you become the 5 people you hang out with the most, right? You do, in terms of how you communicate, in terms of how you see the world, in terms of, who you vote for. Joe Calloway was telling me this great story about a mutual friend of ours. And this was when President Obama was running for re-election. And the friend said, there's no way in hell Obama's going to win again. Everybody I talk to is going to vote against him. Well, because he was of one persuasion and party, the people he hung out with were typically the same philosophical bent, which meant that nobody he talked to was going to vote to re-elect President Obama. And we know what happened, right? He was stunned. Everybody I talked to was going to vote against him. Well, everybody you talked to probably did vote against him. But you don't talk to everybody. It's like when we were talking the other day about sales being a numbers game, but you don't know all the numbers, right? So, Kathy, great to see you. I love to have people around me who are my biggest encouragers and also my biggest critics. Yes, because they'll tell you the truth. I mean, you've seen that with Kathy, with what I've done with Larry Winget and Joe Calloway and Mark Sanborn, Randy Pennington. One of the things is we'll tell each other the truth. And that's how we've stayed as such great friends. There's no hidden agenda. Hey, Eric, great to see you. Opposites complement versus opposites. Eric, I love that. I love that. Opposites complement. That's a better way to put it. You're exactly right. I love that. Hey, Jeff, great to see you. Yeah, true friends will be honest with you. And they may say some things that you don't like, but if you know that there's no other agenda other than they're shooting straight with you, that's great. You spend a year finding someone that finishes you because you're different, then you spend 20 years trying to change them to be more like you. Oh, gosh, Cheryl. Every marriage counselor needs that hanging on a plaque in their, there was what was it? It was like a musical that they tried to get on Broadway. I don't think it ever made it, but there was a musical called I Love You, Marry Me, Now Change. And isn't that the truth? You get attracted to somebody. Let's say a guy like me gets attracted to somebody who's very organized, very methodical, and very precise. And then you spend the rest of the time wondering why they can't be more spontaneous. Right? I get it. So this communication is the key to everything. As we try to stand out, communication is our key. So what we have to do is to focus on the other person. And as what the Harvard study says, if you're a woman, be less concerned about tooting your own horn, be less concerned about, the certainty in the communication. If you're a guy, maybe you need to pull it back a little bit. Maybe you need to be more concerned about your doubts than less assertive with your certainty. And we need to focus on the other person, because that is the key to all great communication. Yeah. Glenn, that's great. Opposites complement us while gently pushing us. I can't remember who said it, but I heard somebody say the truth, my tang got tangled there. The truth shall set you free, right? The truth shall set you free. But before it does that, it's going to make you mad as hell. I love that. Paul, I love this. Paul, watch it on YouTube. He who tooteth not his own horn, the same shall remain untooted. Paul, that is great. I absolutely love that. And there you go, Cheryl, with DISC and studies like that, we are able to understand our own communication better. And I think that's one of the fascinating things about a DISC profile, is not only to help us understand how to communicate better with others, but to help us understand ourselves a little bit more, very, very important. So what's the key? The key is communication, and it's part of what it takes to help us stand out. Hey, before we're done for the day, just this quick reminder, distinctionsummit.com is where you're going to see it pretty soon. Not yet, but very soon. I'm going to be announcing some of the special guest speakers who are going to knock you out. It's going to be so fantastic. I cannot wait. The Distinction Summit, Stand Out, Earn More, going on October the 16th to the 18th. $100 off your registration through Labor Day. Please sign up now. Get the best deal. It's at distinctionsummit.com. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. I'll be back here at the same time. Thanks for everybody. Had a lot of comments, a lot of great participation today. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. See, what was I saying? Parents have to spell around their kids. We need to spell around our devices now. My OK Google just went up. And there it did again. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow at the same time. See you on the next. What's he talking about? I'll see you tomorrow on the next episode of Daily Distinction. See ya.